All right, today I'm joined by a special guest to help me go through some of the biggest news stories, Xavier DuRousseau. Xavier, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Just some background. Xavier is he's an online warrior for conservative values, helping people understand um, common sense. He works with PragerU, which is a group that I love. Dennis Prager, PragerU. Definitely check it out. A lot has been going on with President Trump. Can you keep up with all of it? I feel like every day it's like a fire hydrant, not the ones out in Los Angeles, California, but just a fire hydrant of information coming at us. Do you feel that same way?
It definitely is. It's actually so funny because there's actually this huge report about how all the mainstream media outlets are exhausted from all the information coming from Trump's work. But you know what? It's time to get to work. It's time to stay on top of it. And there's a lot of huge changes coming to our country. So I'm loving every single update.
Yes, I am too. And how about that little online spat between Trump and the president of Colombia over the weekend, where it's like, no, we're refusing your 4 airplanes full of criminals that came in or that have, past history. And Trump's like, 25% tariff. And if you don't take them by the end of the week, it jumps to 50. This guy's not messing around, right? He's got 4 years, and I think he's taking advantage of every single day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the personification of F around and find out. I mean, Colombia completely disrespected every single American citizen to jeopardize our safety even further by denying the return of your criminals, saying that America needs to continue dealing with your criminals. That is as disrespectful as it gets. So President Trump, while golfing, mind you, which makes it 10 times more iconic, shut that completely down, led with strength, and by putting his foot down so firmly, they acquiesce immediately. And this is what we're going to see as a theme, I believe, in the next 4 years, where President Trump's leadership is going to be so just unwaveringly strong that all of our different, whether they're allies, whether they're countries that have wronged us, doesn't matter who they are going to respect our leadership and they are going to follow suit, considering we are the global power. And it's time that we start putting the American citizens first. And everybody recognizes that.
Yeah, I think world leaders probably saw that interaction and were like, "Ooh, shoot! I guess this guy means business." As I was making that fire hydrant joke, I realized, oh, wait a minute, the LA fires. Maybe that was too soon. But what were your thoughts on President Trump's visit to the Los Angeles area with Gavin Newsom as well as Mayor Karen Bass?
It was incredibly inspiring. I actually live here in LA, so I can tell you that every single person in Los Angeles that is being honest about the situation greatly appreciates and admires that President Trump came here. Because, mind you, this is a state that has gone so far out of its way to reject all things and everything that has to do with President Trump. So, the fact that, regardless of that fact, he still came here, he stood in solidarity with the people of Los Angeles, gave us hope and inspiration, but also action and delivered real action steps. That meant the world to us. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that I hang out in Beverly Hills and West Hollywood all the time. And it seems like every day I'm seeing more and more people wearing MAGA hats or even coming up to me appreciating the work it is that I do. So the whole climate here has changed significantly because the fires forced people to wake up. Seeing how much of a massive failure California and Los Angeles leadership has been. Meanwhile, you have President Trump, who in his first week has done more good for our country than our California elected officials have in the last 20 years. That was a very eye opening experience for so many people.
Yeah. Were you, from your vantage point, were you able to see the fires with your own eyes, or at least the smoke?
I did, and it was horrifying. It was actually my first time seeing a wildfire, and it was so hard for my brain to even process what it was that I was looking at. I saw particularly one that was like closer in the West Hollywood area, and I was driving by, and I just couldn't believe my eyes. It's really something so horrible to see, and yeah, my heart goes out to every single person that has lost their homes or been affected by these fires. I have many friends who have lost their homes and have lost everything. And we're all looking at the leadership, how corrupt it has been. Because what do you mean one of the biggest priorities of our state has been to create this speed rail system? Meanwhile, we do not even have water in our reservoirs by the Pacific Palisades. What do you mean we have 72 different genders, but we don't have enough fire departments to actually go and address, or the fire stations to go and address the issues that are happening here? What do you mean you've cut the budget by millions and millions of dollars that would have went to having enough people on staff to fight the fires? You haven't built any new dams, even though we have doubled our population, I believe, in the last 4 years, or sorry, in the last 40 years. I believe California has doubled their population, but we haven't built any more dams to store more water. So all of these issues, they're hitting particularly home for me. And I know how easy it is to laugh at Los Angeles, because Los Angeles in a lot of ways has been the pit of hell. But there are a lot of good, honest, hardworking people. And at the end of the day, there are Americans here who are suffering because of the bad leadership. And I just pray that this is going to be the wake-up call that so many of these people needed.
Yeah. Did you? I expected. I know that Trump was bold. He did not back down from anybody. But I felt like he could have come in there and pointed fingers and blamed. And what I think he was really trying to do was get under the skin of Mayor Karen Bass and say, use your authority now. Like, get people, get things cleaned up. Fix the problems. You know, use your executive authority. Did you feel like he was there blaming, or maybe just trying to provoke them in the direction of getting stuff done for the people of California?
You know, I think he came in a very respectful manner. It was, again, proper leadership, where he came to hold them accountable without completely stomping all over them, because humiliating them is not going to cause any type of action. What needs to be done is, if you basically, President Trump's MO was he came and said, here is a step-by-step plan that you should be doing, that I'm shocked you're not already doing, but you need to be taking these steps, because people deserve to be able to go back to their lots and see if there's anything else that is retrievable from the ruins of where their homes were. There's a lot of people who've been able to find at least one thing that is significant to them, or now has an extra level of significance from their homes that they have lost. So people deserve to go and see that, and people deserve to be able to rebuild, because a lot of people, including personal friends of mine, were told that they weren't going to be able to even start the rebuilding process for at least 18 months. That is completely inexcusable. The permits that we have that are stopping our country from moving forward have become these massive barriers rather than just being guardrails. And President Trump was here to say, no, we are going to start this ASAP. We deserve, the people of Los Angeles deserve to start cleaning up their lots and to be able to go back. And we're going to make those steps more immediate. So that was more the tone of his visit here.
Okay. What were your thoughts on? I mean, this first week, like we mentioned, has been a whirlwind. But the one that has kind of shocked me is just how much money and energy and focus there's been on the southern border. I knew he wanted to close it down, but like, they've got, thousands of people from the military down there. Border Patrol is re-engaged. They've been reauthorized to actually protect the country. What are your thoughts on him, making this promise and then keeping it on protecting the border?
My thought is thank you, because I cannot verbally express enough how pro closing the border and mass deportation I am at this point. The amount of crime that is in the city of Los Angeles and all over our country, the amount of drugs, the amount of fentanyl that has been brought here, the amount of just chaos that is happening in our country. I'm still looking at the Lake and Riley situation, questioning how did this happen? We need to get serious about cracking down on the border, and Donald Trump is doing that. I am so grateful that my president is following through with these promises, because it is so desperately needed.
Yeah. Now, have you always been a conservative, or was there a point in your life where you were more liberal and became conservative?
Oh, I was a liberal majority of my life. I actually grew up in a very arguably far left family. A lot of Marxist ideology went throughout my family. Very liberal parents. So growing up, so my backstory a little bit, I was born in Southside Chicago, in an area that was ridden with crime. One of the worst neighborhoods in all of Chicago is Inglewood. And my eldest brother got into trouble, so we all moved to the middle of nowhere cornfields, and it was a town of maybe 10,000 people, 95% white. And instead of being told growing up to embrace this new area with better schools, fewer criminals, just better opportunities overall, I was often told to just fixate on the fact that I was Black and these kids were white. So growing up, I became super involved with just all things liberal, all things woke. And in college, especially, I started becoming a BLM activist. I was always talking online about microaggressions and racial issues and the sort, thinking that I was on the right side of history. And I accidentally red pilled myself in 2020 because I was bored during the pandemic and I applied to be on a reality show and was cast out of 25,000 people to be on this Netflix show. And essentially, my whole shtick on the show was to promote woke ideas, woke activism, BLM activism. And in the process of getting ready to go be on the show, I was like, well, I need to be talented and the best debater that's out there. So I decided to make a whole series where I was going to debunk PragerU videos. And in the process, I accidentally debunked myself and backed out of the show.
And now you work at PragerU.
And now I work at PragerU. It's so full circle.
Oh
Today
my.
is actually 4 years to date of me making my very first video of just basically letting the world know that I have conservative ideology now. And to now have a show, I'm actually on the set of my brand new show, Respectfully Xavier, here at PragerU. So it's been a beautiful journey, one that I never in my wildest dreams or even wildest nightmares would have expected. But I'm very grateful to be on this side of history now.
Oh, interesting. Let me just based off of your background. Let me ask you this: where do you think Black Lives Matter went wrong? Because when it first started up, I thought, okay, this is interesting. Shed some light on stuff. And then very quickly, I realized it doesn't seem like this group is doing a whole lot for Black Americans. And then all of a sudden, it was like they were buying houses in very wealthy neighborhoods and donating most of the money to LGBTQ and trans issue stuff. What are your thoughts on where they maybe took a wrong turn, or maybe it was all on purpose? I don't know.
To this very day, I can't decide. Has BLM been corrupt from the beginning, or did it just lose track of what was important? It's very hard for me to figure that out. What I can say is from the beginning, they've never really cared about the facts of the situation. They've never been that organization that truly fact checks. They always view things through the lens of race, which is given with the title. But I started being more involved with the actual movement rather than just the ideology in 2020. And what I can say is one of the first eye-opening experiences for me was when I was, helping organize bringing people to marches and getting more events going for BLM. And I would ask some of the leaders, and I was in the San Francisco Bay Area at the time, and I was also still helping with my community in Illinois. And I would ask, where's the money going? I know that we are raising millions of dollars. Why are we paying for so many of these things ourselves? We're paying for all the different things that go into leading these events. And there seems to be no support from the nationals. And I was told to my face that I was concerned about all the wrong things, so that I needed to shut up and get in line, basically. So from the beginning, of at least my involvement being deeper, it has been corrupt. It has not been about having real conversations, or I would even present the conversations of, well, I don't think all police officers are bad. There are certainly some good police officers out there. Why don't we try to work with them to actually lead some reform in the police departments rather than just spreading the narrative that all cops are bad? And again, I was told that I had my head in all the wrong spaces, that I needed to just accept that every single officer was bad, even though I knew that wasn't the case. And very quickly, I started to see behind the curtains when all the marches for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were going on. I started having some questions that I was afraid to ask out loud because I was told that I sounded like a Trump supporter or I sounded like a bigot. And, I should have kept looking deeper into it. But again, I'm so grateful that I did almost go on that show, because if it wasn't for that, I think I would have continued to be a little bit blind for a bit longer.
Okay, interesting. Yeah. Yeah, when you don't know where money is going, I think it's natural to ask. But then for you to be shut down and like made to feel bad for wondering, like, hey, wait a minute, we've raised $100 million off of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. What are we doing with that money? And then to find out that a lot of it went to these multi-million-dollar mansions was kind of disappointing for me when I saw that.
Yeah.
How important do you think social media and podcasts were in this most recent election? I know RFK Jr. publicly said he thought it would be what would win the election. He had hoped it would be for himself, but it seems like they played a massive role in the favor of Donald Trump. What are your thoughts on that?
It certainly did. I'm very grateful to have become a political influencer in the time that I did because we became the source of a lot of different people getting actual information. Because what legacy media, especially leftist media, has not adapted well to is the fact that Gen Z in particular, we are better and faster at finding the truth in real information the than the same amount of time that mainstream media can construct a narrative. So while they're trying to feed us a narrative and lie to us and tell us what it is that we're actually seeing, it's like, oh no, we are able to go online and go to different creators and podcasters and see an unbiased perspective, an unfiltered perspective of what is really happening. So I would definitely argue that this was the first influencer election. The online media presence was extremely consequential in being able to get the truth out there. I have my criticisms and of Elon Musk. He has a lot of pros and cons to him, but one thing that can't be denied is that Elon Musk buying Twitter, now known as X, it was something that was very consequential to our election because you were able to go to Twitter and see what was actually happening, the unedited versions of different videos and documents and all of these different things that we weren't allowed to see over on Meta and TikTok, etc. I actually was very grateful over inauguration weekend to receive an award of the 30 most impactful creators during the 2024 election cycle. And the reason for that is just because a lot of amongst the 30, what we were doing was getting people to think. My MO personally, I wasn't trying to tell people what to think. I was just asking people to think critically, ask more questions. Don't be afraid to be shut down like I was shut down during the BLM marches. Because when you start asking those questions and you start seeking answers that are deeper than just the surface level, you find out the truth. Had I been more objective at that time being, I would have found out faster that $100 million was raised and it was going to mansions and the Act Blue to progressive politicians. Not a single Black business, family, or even a victim's family of police brutality allegedly received any money from BLM. And those are the types of things that political influencers were exposing. Groups like PragerU were exposing. Amla Ekpunobi, shout out to her. She was one of the original PragerU personalities. She was very much on that situation because she too has a similar story of being red pilled during that era. So it's very, very important that we recognize now that that there's a huge shift and where people are getting their information from, and to be a part of it is a massive honor.
Yeah, I didn't know you won an award. That's really could
Thank
would you have had Kamala Harris on your show if she had been more open to going on podcasts?
I still would. I would love to sit down with her. I feel like she'd be really funny to have mimosas with. I will say that, because she's always laughing. But I am very open to having conversations with people I disagree with. And honestly, I would love to interview her. I would want to know. I mean, I already know that she would lie about everything, so it's like it would kind of defeat the purpose. But I wouldn't even ambush her and like go and attack her. I would just try to get to the root of why do you lie? Why are you so comfortable lying? Where does this come from? Do you actually believe in this Marxist ideology that you're pushing forward? Because Kamala Harris is a very educated woman. So to see her be so educated, but to lie and spread such ignorance and misinformation that was destructive to our country so much, I would love to get a couple glasses of wine in her and see if she'll tell the truth.
Okay, yeah. Well, sometimes sometimes people say things when they've had a little bit too much to drink. I actually had Roger Stone on my show, and he used to work with President Nixon. And he said one night he and Nixon were out by the pool, and the former president had had a little too much to drink. And he said, "I know that LBJ and the CIA killed JFK, but I can't tell anybody. And he was like, whoa, what? And then he went on to write multiple books about it. But yeah, got some loose lips there after having a little bit too much to drink. Do you think, I've wondered this, do you think Kamala Harris would have got more views on Joe Rogan than President Trump? I kind of think she might, because people would have been like, let's see what she has to say. I think it could have actually pulled in tens of millions of eyeballs. I don't know. Have you given any thought to that?
You know, I do think there's a case to be made that she might have gotten more viewership, but that doesn't mean it's more positive viewership.
Yeah.
I think because Kamala Harris avoided having any real conversations for so long, I would have been tuned into every single minute of that conversation to see how is she going to crumble? What does she have to say about these hard-hitting questions? Is she going to be honest? Because it's pretty easy to tell when people like her are lying, because she just starts to lie in circles. So it would have been very interesting to witness that. I think so many people would have watched it. It just would have further hurt her campaign. And that's ultimately why I think she didn't go on there. Meanwhile, President Trump, you see him go on all these different podcasts, all these different shows. And if there's anything that he is consistent and honest. You hear him talk about his ideas and his action plan in great detail, because he doesn't care about waiting to hear what a donor is going to tell him in his earpiece about how he needs to answer this question. He's going to tell you how he is going to lead from an alpha perspective. Kamala Harris, on the other hand, was too afraid to answer any question that wasn't already written out on a script or a teleprompter for her. So it would have been interesting to see that, but fortunately, we don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah. Well, unless she becomes the governor of California, I'm hearing rumors that she may end up trying to go for Gavin Newsom's job. Democrat election expert James Carville says Kamala Harris was the worst candidate ever run by the Democrat Party, and he thinks she'll run again. He also said President Biden needs to fade away after all he did, because no one ever wants to hear from him again. What are your thoughts on James Carville's comments?
Respectfully, I feel like Joe Biden already kind of did fade away. He's been on vacation for quite some time. The last time I saw a real Joe Biden headline, it was because he was wearing a MAGA hat. So I wouldn't be surprised if he's on our side too, considering the way they booted him out of his own candidacy. But Kamala Harris is a wildly untalented yet dangerously ambitious politician. And what I mean by that is she's not a good liar. She's not charismatic. They wanted her to be this ovarian version of Barack Obama, and that just was not going to happen. She does not have the skill set to gaslight Americans in the way that Barack Obama was able to. So she was a terrible candidate, which they should have known that, considering when she ran back in 2020 to try to become president, or was in the primaries for that, she was at the bottom of the list. So the fact that she even became VP, to me, it looks like an affirmative action pick, a DEI pick, because they wanted to have a black woman in that role just to make history. So to take her, someone that was always unlikable, because people forget that. A lot of people have short-term memory. For the entirety of her initially running for president, all the way through her vice presidential candidacy, no one really cared for Kamala Harris. She was never popular. She was never moving mountains. She was never this moving speaker. But then all of a sudden, the whole media narrative became Kamala Harris is the greatest thing to have ever touched politics. She's now the Beyonce of the Democratic Party. And that crashed and burned as quickly as it rose, because she proved within weeks that she did not have what it took to be the presidential candidate, let alone the president. So I think I agree with everything that he said there. And if she does run for presidency again, I think it's going to be another massive failure. I just really hope she doesn't become governor of California. It's already too ghetto here, and I don't need her to create more terrible policies for us.
Oh, man, I can't even imagine. President Trump, he hasn't come right out and said this, but he did hint about this in a speech. I don't know, maybe he was, dropping breadcrumbs to Kash Patel or Pam Bondi, but he said he thought that maybe Kamala Harris should be investigated for buying off an endorsement from Beyonce, Oprah Winfrey, and Reverend Al Sharpton. They misled people that those were genuine endorsements when in fact they made millions of dollars. Any thoughts on whether there should be an investigation, or do we just move on?
Unpopular opinion, but I don't think that's worth an investigation. I'm so ready for our country to move on. And there were a lot of things that happened in the last 4 to 10 years, you could even say, that I think are worth looking more into, that are significantly more important than Kamala Harris paying off Beyonce. Because we all, even though they tried to lie and say Beyonce wasn't paid, it's like, come on, Beyonce doesn't do anything for free. Let's be so serious. So I just don't think that that's worth looking into. It's wasted money, it's wasted taxpayer dollars and wasted donations, but there's so many other things that have been wasted in these years. I'm just so ready for us to move on. And honestly, I don't think it's a bad campaign strategy to go and recruit celebrities and influencers and creators, because these are influential people. Why would you not? I think it's actually a smart tactic to do that. I think that that was something that was smart of the Democratic Party to do. I will give them that. It didn't work, but it certainly did shift certain people's votes, because a people put an alarming amount of trust in the likes of Beyonce and Oprah Winfrey, etc. So it was a smart tactic. It just failed because the policies didn't back up anything. There was no substance to what they said. There was no substance to what they were standing for. So I don't think it's worth looking into anymore.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a good point. I was irritated, that they spent almost $40 million on the Russia hoax. We certainly don't need to be wasting money on investigating Kamala Harris. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you coming on. One last question. A lot of people woke up and joined the Republican movement or the libertarian movement with Trump and RFK, and just this confluence of making America great and healthy. How do you think we can red pill more people who maybe grew up with your same childhood, where they're seeing America through this lens of, maybe this is not a country that wants me to succeed, or that I can't succeed, or that a portion of the country is just evil. How do we red pill more people, in your opinion?
Now that President Trump has won and culture is already shifting, I would say two things. I would say, do your own research and pay attention. Because if you pay attention, there's going to be so many changes that are happening in our country. It's already happening. We're getting rid of so many of these horrible policies that were crippling our nation. And I think that we are going to see our world healing and a lot of these wars ending because of the leadership of President Trump. So if you're paying attention, an honest person won't be able to deny President Trump's influence on all these positive things that are happening around the world because of his leadership. And then why I say continue to do your own research, do your unbiased research without bias confirmation. It's worth doing, so that way when you hear some of these alarming headlines, you're not going with the narrative anymore. I'll give you a perfect example. One of the executive orders that, or some handful of the executive orders that Donald Trump was putting forth and getting rid of, was everything that had to do with DEI and the federal government. Now, what these left-wing influencers and leftist media are trying to say is, oh, he's getting rid of civil rights. He is making it to where Black people can be fired or not hired because of our skin color. If you actually do your research, you realize that is clearly not the case, because we already have the Civil Rights Act in the Constitution. So that's not going anywhere. What's happening is that we are now prioritizing merit, hard work, and qualifications, rather than having forced diversity quotas that lower the quality of work in our federal agencies. So if you do your own research, you realize that, oh, this is a lie. Because otherwise, if you're hearing that we're getting rid of DEI and you think that that means people of color are no longer going to have opportunities, then you just have either a low self-esteem or a very low image of groups. You're trying to marginalize minority groups. And if you open your eyes to that and you realize how just systemically disempowering that rhetoric is, I think that you'll realize, oh no, this is exactly what we need, is to get rid of this this whole DEI propaganda. Because once you get rid of that narrative, then people are able to let their accomplishments speak for themselves. And I think that's going to heal racial relations more than anything. So it's a beautiful time right now. And I think you're going to continue to see more people wake up like I did. And I'm just very, very, very happy with where we're going as a country.
Oh, excellent. I appreciate you coming on. If people want to follow you online and hear more from you, where can I point them?
Thank you so much for having me. And I'm on almost all social media platforms, just as my first name. It's a regular spelling. It's Xaviaer. So YouTube, I have a brand new show live Tuesdays and Thursdays, respectfully Xavier on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all at Xavier. And then on Twitter/X, I'm at Xavier D. Can't get
Okay.
that username.
Yeah, I will. I will put those direct links down below. Xavier, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Likewise, thank you for having me.